Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second half of our scheduled program this evening. We'll be joined very shortly by the Democratic candidates for mayor. I'll remind you that we've got Ken Fisher moderating and myself, Ken Kurson, and we'll be joined on stage by former Councilman Sal Albanese. He's coming out. Public Advocate. We've got Public Advocate Bill de Blasio. I believe he's 1 minute away, but we will be joined very shortly by Comptroller John Liu, Council Speaker Christine Quinn, and finally, former Controller, please be civil, everybody. Finally, we've got former Controller Bill Thompson, and Ken Fisher will introduce the rules of the program.
Welcome back, everybody. So for the candidates, just to briefly go over the rules, we're going to ask you to make 1 minute opening statements. We're going to do those alphabetically, so we'll start with you, Sal. You'll also be invited to do 1 minute closing statements. We'll do those reverse alphabetically, so Bill, you'll kick that round off. In between, we're going to ask you a series of questions. Some of those questions are coming from the two Kens. Other questions have been suggested by people from the 92nd Street Y. So it's not any one topic. It's going to be a variety of things. We think you'll find the questions interesting and the audience lively. We have the option of asking follow-up questions specifically directed to just one or two of you. Those answers 30 seconds. If a candidate mentions another candidate by name, that person will have 30 seconds to respond. You don't have to use all of your time, but I expect you probably all will. But if you go over your time, we reserve the right to reduce the closing statement time to make up for that. So we want to get in as many questions as we can. We hope that you'll enjoy it. Your Republican colleagues have warmed the audience up. Everybody's excited and ready to hear what you have to say. And now we're going to begin.
All right, so opening statements. Sal Albanese will begin.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Sal Albanese. I'm the only candidate in this race who's not a career politician, who's not accepting money from lobbyists, developers, and special interest groups, and plan on putting the people in charge of City Hall. A bit about my background. I came here as an immigrant at the age of 8. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Brooklyn where my mother supported us on a garment worker's salary. The public schools, the libraries, the sports programs kept us out of trouble and elevated my family from the working class to the middle class. Those were all services that the city provided. I spent 11 years as a New York City public school teacher. I spent 15 years on the city council with an unblemished record of independence, from gay rights to the living wage bill to term limits. I always voted in the best interest of New Yorkers, and I spent the last 15 years working as a lawyer and a financial services professional. How much time do I have?
You have 1 minute each, and these gentlemen will show a yellow card at 15 seconds and a red when you're done.
New York.
There you go. Don't ask another question.
That's that.
Exactly. Don't ask a second question.
Well, I'm running for mayor because I'm just not satisfied with the status quo in this city. City Hall simply isn't listening to the people anymore. We have so many cases where our needs go unmet. We know right now, for example, in our city, 1 million New Yorkers have no paid sick day coverage. And yet for 3 years, that legislation isn't moving because of both sides of City Hall. That's not a government responding to its people. We have the greatest income disparity since the Great Depression. Things like living wage and paid sick that would address it aren't happening. We have a crisis in the relationship between police and community in many parts of this city. And yet stop and frisk increase by hundreds of thousands of stops a year without any public debate, without any oversight of the police, which is why we need an inspector general for our police department. This is a city that needs a shot in the arm in terms of more democracy, more involvement in our people, so we can have policies that actually address our neighborhoods and the times we're living in. I think we can achieve it together, but it's going to take a very different approach to government than we've had in the Bloomberg years.
Speaker Quinn.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you everyone in the 92nd Street Y and the Observer for organizing tonight's event. You know, I'm running for mayor because I want to make this city a place of even greater opportunity for everyone. I want to keep this city the place it is that my grandparents came to 100 years ago from Ireland because they thought and had heard and knew amazing things could happen here. And to make that happen as a mayor, you need more than just criticisms and words. You need to be able to deliver for New Yorkers. And that's what I've done as Speaker of the City Council, passing 7 balanced on-time budgets. In the good years, taking billions of dollars, paying future bills, and putting $3 billion in a trust fund so we would be prepared to weather the bad times. Or standing up and stopping teacher layoffs. Or expanding affordable housing programs across this city. Because if you want to be mayor, if you want to make the city a better place, you need to know how to lead, you need to be able to deliver, and that's what I've done as Speaker, and I'll do even more of it with your support as mayor.
And Mr. Thompson.
Let me thank the Observer and the 92nd Street Y for hosting us this evening. I'm Bill Thompson, for those of you who don't know me, former controller of the City of New York, former president of the New York City Board of Education. I've had experience in the private sector as a municipal finance professional. New York City is a great place, but it can be made even better. I want to be a mayor who stands up and makes sure that New York City continues to stay the safest big city in America for all New Yorkers in all communities. I want to be a mayor who really provides oversight in our educational system, who puts an educator in charge of our public school system again, who makes sure that our children really are learning, because right now we know that they're not learning. They're not able to compete on the level that they should. I want to be a mayor who really helps to make sure that those who continue to be priced out of the city of New York, we keep more New Yorkers here. I want to be a mayor who represents all 5 boroughs and the great communities of those 5 boroughs. I believe with my experience and background, I'd be the best person to be the next mayor of the city of New York.
All right, thank you. Jump right in with the questions. We'll go in reverse order this time for the answers. This is a political event. This is a political campaign and a political season. So I'm wondering, for the Democrats on the stage, the vast majority of voters in the city are Democrats. And yet there hasn't been a Democratic mayor for 2 decades. What's going on here? Has the party done something wrong? Have they something wrong with the candidates? Your opinion, please.
No, I think that New Yorkers continue to make informed decisions. They want people who are going to represent the city. They want people who are going to represent each community. They want someone who's going to stand up and work for them. And I think that what we've seen over a period of time, other events have come into play and have helped to change the direction of history. I think New York City is going to elect a Democratic mayor this time around. I think that it's a question of talking to the people of the city of New York about the issues that face them, about the challenges that we face and solutions. People don't want to hear slogans. They want solutions. So I believe that New York City is going to elect a Democratic mayor this year. And I think, as I said, that it's a question of speaking to people about the problems and the solutions that face us.
Speaker Quinn.
You know, look, those are the facts of the past 20 years, but they really aren't the question before us tonight. The question before us tonight is not who the mayor has been, it's who the mayor is going to be. And I agree with Billy. I think that the next mayor, I know the next mayor is going to be a Democrat because I know that person is going to be me. Why do I know that? Because I know that New Yorkers are going to want to pick a mayor who has a clear record, a record of managing the city's finances well, a record of standing up and preventing teacher layoffs, of keeping firehouses open, a record of passing more pro-tenant legislation than any city council in the history of the city, a record of passing legislation that expands opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses to a level they have never been at before in the city of New York, and a record of standing up when services in New York City are under attack, and standing up when services to women are under attack, like our reproductive rights clinic, but also standing up when police have done the wrong thing, which is why I'm so proud we'll be passing an Inspector General monitoring bill soon in the City Council.
Thank you. Mr. de Blasio.
I just want to say to Speaker Quinn, I appreciate your sense of confidence, but you know, something that Mayor Bloomberg didn't fully understand, the people get to make this decision, and the people haven't spoken yet.
There it is.
And I think in answer to the question, Ken, you know, the people didn't get the chance to have the vote they wanted to have in 2009 because term limits were changed without them. And in all the Bloomberg elections, there's a massive amount of money polluting the political process, something we see all over this country. And I think it's also fair to say that in some of those elections, Democrats didn't do a good enough job of offering solutions. So I think there's a lot of reasons why it happened. But right now, I can tell you very clearly, the people of this city want a government that will listen to them again. They're sick of the imperial mayoralty. They want a government that actually believes, a lot of the best ideas and insights reside among the people, a government that's ready to listen again.
Okay, John? Mr. Albanese?
I think New York City residents are an independent lot. They don't just vote party. I come from an area that elects Republicans and Democrats, and I think it's healthy to have a two-party system where there are ideas, competing ideas, and discussions. I believe that one of the reasons why Mayor Bloomberg was elected, besides his huge fortune, was the fact that he didn't owe anybody anything. He's independent because he's able to finance his own campaigns. And I can tell you, standing up here, that what really is important in order for you to make decisions on the merits is to be able to get to City Hall without being handcuffed by special interest groups. And I plan on raising my money. I plan on raising my money from New Yorkers who are interested in good government around the city. We have a great public finance system that I helped to author, and I want to get to City Hall to be an effective leader rather than being sort of controlled or having special interest groups run the show.
All of you in different forms, Sal, I'm not sure because you haven't been in public office recently, but I think this is a fair comment. All of you have expressed concern about the city's contracting out of goods and services, either because there's been mismanagement or just you don't think the right people get the opportunities to do it. And those of you who are in public office, many of you were also critical of the fact that we had a school bus strike. Where it was an issue of security for the workers, the private companies. Were they making too much money? Were they paying the workers adequately? Would any of you make the school bus drivers public employees? Is that the kind of service that you'd rather have done by public employees who can't strike under the Taylor law? Or should they continue, that be the kind of service that should continue to be provided by the private sector, and if so, why? Why don't we start with Sal and work our way down this way?
I think that there are certain services that the city can certainly contract out in niche areas. I don't support that we make the school bus drivers public employees. I do support their effort to receive a living wage for driving around the city some of our most vulnerable youngsters. I also think that it wouldn't save the city any money. But I would be very careful about privatizing services. There are areas, for example, golf courses that are privatized, and the contractors do a good job there. But there are many areas where this contracting out process breeds a lot of corruption. We saw the City Times scandal with $750 million of waste and corruption. So we need a contracting out budget. It has to be monitored carefully, and when the city can provide services in-house, we should provide the services in-house.
Bill?
I think during the Bloomberg years, contracting out became a false idol. I think, yes, Sal's right, there were instances of serious corruption. I also think it was counterproductive in terms of the economic needs of the city. We need to focus on our city government employing its own people, not sending resources outside the city. And the question of school buses, about a year and a half ago, my office did a report, and here's the reality. School bus service in this city is simply not what it should be. For parents, particularly parents with special ed kids, it's often a nightmare of bus trips that take way too long for their kids, a lack of communication with parents, and we're spending too much money on it. So I think we need to make some real reforms in how we do school bus service. One of them might be to look at having it become a public function. That's certainly a real option. But whatever we do, the notion that we have special ed kids on a school bus for 90 minutes or more one way means we are doing something profoundly wrong, and we need a reworking of our school bus service.
There's no question, just generally, we're contracting out way more than we need to. But I just want to say we have much more information about our contracts than we ever did, in large part because of our Vendex system, which was brought to us by former council member, now Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who's with us tonight. So thank you, Carolyn, for that and for being with us tonight. And we need to bring much of that contracting back in. That's why we passed legislation when I was Speaker that increases the pre-existing law that had been passed that requires the city to do more analysis before they contract out and make that question of, is this contract going to save us money or not, really transparent in a way it had never been under the prior law, which was well intended but just didn't go as far as we now know it needed to. On the school bus strike, the reality is we pay more than any other American city for school buses. Why are we paying more? Where are we paying more? It's not to the workers, is it to the middle person? Would it be cheaper if we brought it in, if you factored in pensions? Those are the exact questions we need to analyze so we can figure out how we can have safe, quality services at the lowest cost. The next mayor needs to do that financial analysis in a way that never occurred, unfortunately, during this strike.
You know, many of us supported the school bus drivers in the strike because what we wanted were drivers with a record of safety in transporting our children. That's why we supported them, and that's what they've done for so many years. I don't want to add bureaucracy to the city of New York and bring, school bus services and let's make the drivers part of a city administration. We don't need to do that. We need to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, number one. When it comes to that, we need to make sure that those drivers continue to be safe and secure and make sure that they transport the most valuable commodities we have, our children, safely. Bloomberg administration has relied way too much on contracting out. We need to bring a lot of that money back in-house. We need to make sure that our workforce has the skills necessary to do the job and do the jobs well. And if it's a question of working in workforce development, then that's what we need to do. But we don't need more contracting out. We don't need to send more of our hard-earned tax dollars out to other companies. We need to make sure we can do the job and do it better.
Okay. This is a question I'll direct first to Speaker Quinn, and then we'll go to Bill and Sal, and Bill to my left. And this has generated a tremendous amount of interest on the 92nd Street Wise Facebook page. It was asked by many people, including Kathy Morin and Helene Eisenberg-Batty, and it's about the fact that the Yorkville East Harlem community is galvanized and horrified by the plan to ship all of Manhattan's residential and commercial garbage through the Asphalt Green Community Center right down the street here on 91st Street. This is a treasure that's used by people from all over the city, and we'd like to hear whether you support the plan and why, or whether you oppose it. Speaker Quinn.
Sure. I do support the plan. That facility is part of a citywide management,
Please let's hear her answer.
Which is part of a citywide solid waste management plan that I helped shepherd through the city council. And I want to be clear, when I shepherded that plan through, I made certain that there was also a facility in my district. Because I wasn't going to stand here tonight and say your community had to have a facility if there wasn't going to be one on the Gansevoort Peninsula in my district as well. This plan, a citywide solid waste management plan, is based on the belief that boroughs need to move to greater self-sufficiency for their own garbage. Two, it's a plan based on a vision of environmental justice, that we need to stop placing all of the municipal—
Please, let her speak, please.
We need to stop the historical position of placing all of our municipal garbage facilities in lower income communities of color. That's what we've done. This plan puts an end to it. I will work to make changes in the plan. Look, you can boo all you want, but we need a city that fights environmental racism, and that's what this plan does.
A lot of passion on this issue on all sides. Thank you, everybody. A lot of passion on this issue on all sides. We'll hear from Bill Thompson now on the same question.
I was out visiting Asphalt Green last week. The more that I see about the use of this site, the more questions I have. I have to say, look, I've gone past there before. I had the chance to walk through Asphalt Green, but not just Asphalt Green, the surrounding community. There are individuals, I had to talk, one of the tenant leaders for one of the Housing Authority developments a couple of blocks away, how she's just recovering from the asthma that she had before, as that site used to be used for a transfer site. The more I see, the more questions I have. The cost, how that area will flood, and what we saw happened during Hurricane Sandy. So again and again, I'm going back, I'm going through a deliberative process, taking a look at cost, taking a look at site, looking and talking to people in the neighborhood, because I have major questions about the use of that site as a transfer site.
Okay. Bill de Blasio.
Ken, I just say we've done a lot of debates and forums. I just wish we could get some audience reaction going here. It would be so much more engaging. Look, I do believe in the idea of a 5-borough plan. I do believe in borough self-sufficiency. I also believe that City Hall has not listened to and has not answered the concerns of this community. Because there are real health concerns, there are real concerns about the safety of children, there are real concerns about the aftermath of Sandy, and they simply haven't been addressed. So I've been in other settings where I obviously understand where the majority feels, and I'm not going to say that the 5-borough plan isn't the way to go. It is the way to go. We have to have a 5-borough solution. You can't change one without changing the others. But by the same token, these fundamental questions must be answered before this facility goes online. You can't have such profound neighborhood needs crying out and have City Hall ignore them.
And finally, Sal Albanese.
I think Sandy was a game changer for all of these facilities around our waterfront. I mean, one of the things that government failed to do is prepare for a storm that was predicted 10 years ago would hit our area, would hit the city, and we're going to have other storms. So I plan on reassessing any waterfront facility, a waste transfer station by the water. It could be a potential disaster. I mean, if we have one of those storms and that facility gets overwhelmed, you can have sewerage all over Manhattan, which would cause an unmitigated disaster. So my position is that I'm going to reassess all of those facilities, and I have serious problems with the location of that waste transfer station.
So some of the questions that came from members of the Y are being collected on index cards. Some came through Facebook, and some were done, people in the street interviews done here at the Y. So we're now going to get a question, and you'll be able to see it on the video screens. Let's go to the video.
I want to know why the MTA, who's always crying for money, is putting all these steel benches by the bus stops and taking out the glass and casing from the bus stop. If they have no money and they're constantly doing fare hikes, why would they take the glass and casing off of a bus stop where people can get wet and invest money in new benches? It seems just a misuse of the money. And I want to know what mayor is going to take care of that.
Why don't we start with Bill de Blasio, then Sal, and then we'll do Christine and Bill.
That's the voice of the people right there. I've met that lady 1,000 times. I have to say, her logic's pretty strong. I do think people don't like to get wet in the rain, and I don't know why government would help them get more wet. But, but I don't know, actually, why the MTA did that or why they put in the benches. I'm happy to suggest to the MTA that shelter is a good thing. That's my statement.
Sal?
I think she's brilliant. The fact of the matter is that if you go to my website, we put a comprehensive transportation plan together forward, which calls for the City of New York, the City Council, and the Mayor to have control over the New York City transit system. It's outrageous that we have this amorphous agency called the MTA, where there's no transparency. Suburbanites get subsidized more money than city residents. And it's one of the most important services that the city offers, along with education and public safety. The fact that the city of New York, unlike other cities across the world, doesn't control its own transit system is a major policy error. And I plan on going to Albany to make sure that the legislature gives us that control so we can run our own transit system, and we will get the appropriate answers. I want people on the board who are actually riders, rather than most of the people that are on the board are politicians who really never ride the subway or take the bus. So we need to really re-engineer that whole system.
Chris?
I share Bill's sentiment. I don't know why. I don't know the answer to this question. You hate to get stumped, but I got to be honest, I don't know. And I will go and find out why the MTA has seemingly moved away from the concept of keeping people dry. It seems like a no-brainer, and I will follow up on that. But the larger issue about the MTA and its management and what it's really focused on is a big one. And I agree with Sal that we should move to a structure where the city has authority. Some people say be careful what you wish for, but the city has real authority over its subway, bus, its mass transit system. We don't mind subsidizing the suburbs. We know we do that. But we're subsidizing them so much, it takes away from our own service. That's too much. We need to have our own control. And I think this is really a good example of this is on the west side. When we rezoned Hudson Yards, we knew we had to extend the number 7 for this to work. We knew, just like that woman, we couldn't rely on the MTA. And that's why my colleagues and I and the mayor came up with a funding mechanism outside of the MTA, and that's why the 7 is getting extended on time and on budget. You can't say that when the MTA is in charge, unfortunately.
Ken, I'm going to take the bold position tonight and come out against people getting wetter in the city of New York. I was not aware all the bus stop shelters I've seen appear to be there, and I haven't seen benches being put in to replace them. But the larger issue of funding for the MTA, and instead of continuing to dip into the pockets of strap hangers every time we need additional funds, I've recommended a few things in ways to fund mass transit a lot stronger and a lot more efficient in New York City. Number one, as we look at it, restoration of a commuter tax. Those in New Jersey and Connecticut and Long Island, again, need to be able to contribute, not to the city of New York, because we're never going to get that back again, but to the mass transit system, because the mass transit system is regional and serves all of us. Second, those counties that are covered by the MTA, we need to, in fact, have a registration fee on automobiles that is based on weight. Heavier, more fuel-efficient, or lighter, more fuel-efficient vehicle, as opposed to a heavier SUV, it costs you more to register that SUV. We can use the funds from that for mass transit also. Those things together generate anywhere between $1.7 billion and $2 billion that should go directly into mass transit for upgrades of systems, for restoration of some of the bus stop shelters if they're taking them out, but to run a more efficient, better, stronger system.
Right. I'll ask another question. We'll start right next to me and go down the line.
Excuse me, sorry.
The question is, which past mayor would you identify as a role model for how you would want to run a potential administration of your own?
You know, I've been asked that question before, and I've made sure that I haven't alienated former mayors. Look, I think that as you look back at the mayors that we've had in the city of New York, at least in my adult life, we've had mayors that represented a number of different things. And I think that's what you try and take away. And Ed Koch, who helped to bring the spirit back to the city of New York and helped to create hundreds of thousands of units of extra housing in the city of New York. You look at a mayor like David Dinkins, his concern for children, his focus in bringing additional dollars back to the city of New York for police. That was the basis in Safe Streets, Safe City. Rudy Giuliani, in many ways, who did, while I might have disagreed with a number of things that he did do, there was making sure that crime reduction and showing that the city of New York could achieve things. And Mike Bloomberg, who has helped to run the city and move the city in a positive direction. All of those mayors are things that you want to take parts from and emulate them, and that's the type of mayor I would be, the best of all worlds, if you will.
So everybody. I guess that's everybody.
The best.
Speaker Quinn.
You know, I think if you look at recent.
Hey, John.
Let's welcome John Liu to the stage.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
If you look at recent past mayors, there's things you would want to take from how all of them performed in different ways. I mean, Ed Koch just had that complete spirit of we're not gonna go under. Come hell or high water, he was gonna find a way to bring this city back, and in some ways people would say he willed us back out of bankruptcy, and that's the kind of energy, and I won't take no for an answer, you want in a mayor. David Dinkins had, you know, just about the biggest heart we've seen in a long time in Gracie Mansion, and you could, when you saw him out there, you could see how much he cared for children and folks in need in this city, and his policies were infused with that. You know, Rudy Giuliani, a mayor who I did not agree with on many things, you had to give him credit for when people said you can't do that, he doubled down and said, oh, I'll find a way. Not always what I agreed with, but you gotta give him credit for being that dogged. And Mike Bloomberg has been a mayor, and not all of them I've agreed with either, but of big ideas and big visions and finding ways to push the envelope to make New York City a place of big, bold ideas. We see that not far from here and what's gonna happen on Roosevelt Island with Cornell and Technion. So you wanna take all of that together and find the best ingredients to how to be the best mayor.
John Liu, the question is, what past mayor would you identify as a role model for how you run your administration?
I don't know that much about Ed Koch personally, just because when I got out of school, Mayor Dinkins was running for mayor, and I volunteered on his campaign. And so I would take him as my role model, mainly for the reason that he expanded opportunities for so many people that didn't have opportunities before. And I think that's something that we need to get back to, because I see a shortage of opportunities for too many New Yorkers today. Rudy Giuliani was able to get people to stop washing their windshields, and for some reason, a lot of people like that. I appreciated that, because it was always difficult to get going once the light turned green, until Rudy came along. And then, of course, I certainly do admire his management after 9/11. Mayor Bloomberg, I think, has really, I think he was on the right track in his first term. The second term was off track, and the third term was just plain illegal. That should never have happened. And we've got to turn the city away, take it away from the billionaires and the big corporations, and put it back in the hands of the people of this great city.
Bill de Blasio.
I'm going to say the greatest mayor I think we've had, I wish I had met him, I never got to, was Fiorello LaGuardia. I don't think it's even close.
You stole my line.
Yeah. Look, Fiorello to me is the exemplar, because he epitomized an activist government and a government that got things done, but with a compassion and a sense of fairness and opportunity and absolute inclusion for every kind of New Yorker. There's a reason he's beloved in this city to this day, because those are our values. And I have to say to my colleagues, I respect your even-handedness. I just don't have a lot good to say about Rudy Giuliani, who I think profoundly divided us. And I have to say that comparison of Fiorello on the one hand, Giuliani on the other, it speaks volumes to me, because the role of the mayor is to bring us together. That's a constant task in the most diverse city in the world. And that does mean, again, a city hall that listens and cares about every kind of person, not just the elite. But in the case of Rudy, I think, sadly, his legacy is a lot of division that took a long time to overcome.
And finally, Sal Albanese.
Well, at the risk of being called a copycat,
It's okay, you can copy on that.
Fiorello LaGuardia, I wish I had met him as well, is my ideal of a mayor, because he was truly independent. He took on party bosses. He put together a fusion ticket of citizens around the city and got to City Hall without being indebted to special interests. That's why he had such a great tenure as mayor. A bold vision for the city. He built tremendous housing in this town. His vision for economic development, of bringing people together, was amazing. And he's someone that I consider a role model.
I'm going to ask you a question that I asked your Republican colleagues. We got some very interesting answers from them. I'm sure yours will be just as interesting. And by the way,
It's going to be more interesting.
And after that, we'll do another video question. So one of the signature initiatives of Mike Bloomberg personally was to give up the mayor's office on the first floor of City Hall, take the Board of Estimate chamber, and surround himself with his deputies and his aides as if it was the trading floor of a stock exchange. Yeah. He said it promoted collegiality and transparency. So if you are elected mayor of the city of New York, will you keep the bullpen, or will you use private offices for yourself and your key aides? Sal, we'll start with you and work our way down.
I actually like the bullpen, and I've seen the firm that I worked for. I left to run for mayor on December 31st. Had started moving in that direction, and it really created collaboration between the folks on our floor. We exchanged ideas more. It's a wide open process, and I think it's a good way to go because collaboration is important, and you have somebody to talk to immediately and see what they're doing. It also makes people accountable. You see other people working, you kind of get motivated as well. So I like the approach, and I certainly will keep it. I actually met with the mayor when he decided to run back in 2000. He called me because I had run in '97. I was really impressed with the fact he had this little desk, no big office, major entrepreneur, and I thought that was a nice touch, actually.
Bill?
Well, in the bullpen, the mayor is surrounded by the voices of his inner circle, but he's been unable to hear the voices of the people. So whatever the model did, in a funny way, I think it made him more isolated. And I have to say I've seen that environment, and I'm always struck that I think it leads sometimes to a kind of superficial thinking because people don't get to stop and truly listen and be mindful of the effects of their decisions. Sometimes in conversations I've had with the mayor and some of his aides, the decision making is a little superficial, a little flip, and not sensitive to all the meaning of the decisions in terms of the people at the grassroots. So I can't tell you I'm a fan of the bullpen because I look at the results and I don't see the quality of democracy I think New Yorkers demand.
John?
I am a fan of the bullpen style, and in fact, I've made some renovations in my own office to the extent I can to open up the process, to literally have more light and transparency permeate the office itself, and to have people work more closely together. So I do agree with the bullpen. Mayor Bloomberg's bullpen is something that I don't think I'll be able to emulate. His bullpen is stocked with every kind of food and refreshment imaginable under the sun. The only thing I can pledge is every so often I will bring bagels in for the staff. But it's not just a matter of how you lay out the office. It's a matter of who is in that office. And if you look at the people who work at City Hall, I have to say, the statistical chances that represents the merit of New York City is almost null to nothing. What we need is a city hall where we look for talent in every corner, every neighborhood, every group within New York City so that we can truly reflect the diversity and therefore the skills, knowledge, and talent that's resident in all the people of this great city.
Chris?
I think I'm not going to spend any money to redo the office. Let me tell you, any capital money we have, we're going to put it in schools and libraries and road repair and not changing the bullpen, though I think there'll probably be, you'll get the short straw if you get the desk near mine, given how loud I can be sometimes. But, the real, that was my staff laughing. But, the real question is not where your desk is or who do you sit next to or whether there's a wall or a cubby between you. It's where are the ideas coming from that are flowing in, that are getting addressed in that office, whether it's a bullpen or a separate space. And those ideas and issues and problems that are being focused on need to be what's happening in New Yorkers' lives. That's why when I became speaker, we put a system in place called CouncilStat, where we took all of the 51 district offices and put them into one computer system. So on a monthly basis, we would get reports not of who was calling the council members' offices, but what types of complaints. So we could see what were local trends, borough trends, citywide trends, trends in neighborhoods of similar makeups, so we could then focus our legislation, policy, and budget on responding to those problems. So the makeup of the office isn't so much the question, the question is that office focusing on people's problems and delivering?
Bill?
you know, it's a little bit of a contradiction that the mayor who has set up a system, the bullpen, to be able to help benefit communication, really talks to the people of the city of New York less than probably any other mayor I've ever seen. I think that is, I would get rid of a bullpen. I mean, the truth is, from what I've heard and speaking to people who have worked in there, it is great to be able to communicate, but it's hard to be able to focus and do work in that type of environment. It's a trading desk, let's be honest. So I think it is important that people are able to communicate, but at the same point, they're also able to focus, to work, to be able to have those conversations that are going to lead to work being done on the part of the city, that are going to lead to innovation and real creativity. I don't think the bullpen adds that or aids that. I think if anything, as people have indicated, it's hard to read, it's hard to focus, it's hard to get things done. I want people who are going to get things done. I want people who are going to communicate, but I want people who are going to get things done.
Let's hear another one of the voices of those New Yorkers that all of you want to hear from. So we have another video question.
My name is Stephen Weiland. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I'd like to ask the mayor, the candidates who want to run for mayor, what are you going to do about the infrastructure in New York City? The roads in the city and the bridges are like a third world nation.
Why don't we, this time we'll start with John and work our way down to Sal, then we'll come back to Chris and Bill. John?
Well, the roads are not the only thing that reminds me of a third world nation. I think that the overuse of this stop and frisk tactic reminds me of a third world dictatorship. But we have an aging infrastructure, there's no question about it. I've got a plan that will unleash the inherent value of New York's land, real estate, to fund the building of additional housing, infrastructure, including transit, as well as underground water and sewer infrastructure, and the schools that will be needed in the coming years, because our population is continuing to increase in the city of New York. We've got 1 million people projected to be added to the city's population by the year 2030, and so there is going to be greater density, but I think if we do it right, we can take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves with growth. This is a problem that other major American cities would love to have. We have the ability to channel these resources and the opportunities to build up our infrastructure, which is clearly needed in our aging city. Thank you.
Bill?
Well, I'll compete with my entry of how is our city like a third world nation by saying, you know, having 2 referendums decided by the people on term limits overturned reminds me of a third world nation. On the question of infrastructure, I think 2 things jump out to me. One, we are simply not using a resource that we control, which is our pension fund dollars. We have the ability to apply some of those investments to areas like affordable housing, desperately needed in this city, an investment that would lead to job creation at the same time and help to stimulate an economy that still has huge unemployment. I think this administration has been uncreative in the use of our pension dollars to help address infrastructure. I think the second thing is the next mayor of New York City is going to have to be, once again, as mayors were in the past, the spokesperson for urban America nationally, and is going to have to go to Washington and fight for fairness when it comes to issues like infrastructure and mass transit. If Washington doesn't get back in that business in the coming years, it will be abandoning the economic impact of cities. We are now the economic engine of this nation more than ever, but Washington turns its head away. The next mayor is going to have to build some consensus, use the bully pulpit to start to change that reality.
A report was just released this week which basically said the nation's infrastructure is a disaster, including New York City's. And New York City is facing competition from cities around the world whose infrastructure is much, much better than ours. And I think it's a national tragedy, and it's also shows what a reactive government that we have. That's the difference between the LaGuardia administration and administrations that we have had over the last 30 or 40 years, where we're reactive as a government, not proactive. I plan on having a deputy mayor for infrastructure who's going to put this on the agenda, front and center. Our bridges, our roads, our mass transit system, Our shoreline needs to be protected. Our power grid has to be shored up, and we have to make sure that we have the resources to do that. The pension plan is a good idea, but I like to remind Bill that the pension trustees have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize those returns, so we can't willy-nilly use those funds for massive infrastructure projects unless there are great returns for our retirees. So we got to be careful about that, Bill. So I'm going to make it a major project, and to lead a coalition of mayors across the country for rebuilding our infrastructure, because we lose our competitiveness as a country. I'm sorry.
Christine?
The issue of infrastructure and keeping New York City's infrastructure strong and up to date is important for the reasons that the gentleman on the film said, for quality of life, but it's also important, and we need to remember this, because the city's capital budget, which funds this, is also an economic engine that helps keep people working. You know, during the economic downturn, the only real construction or capital work that was going on in the city was work funded by the capital budget. So yes, the streets are a critically important issue, but we need to remember that human part of this work as well. And that's why every time there have been proposals by Mayor Bloomberg to cut back spending in the capital budget, we in the council have stood up and said, no, we need to keep the capital budget strong to deal with problems like that and to keep people working. But we've also managed the capital budget smartly, so we would have resources and the opportunity with these super low interest rates to borrow. We prepaid bonds early. We managed against what our cap would be, and we're in a position now where we can and should borrow more to expand on some of the city's infrastructure projects. This is the financial time to do it, fix the roads, and put people to work.
Bill Thompson?
You know, it is clear that infrastructure is obviously important to the city of New York. One of the lessons that we've learned from Hurricane Sandy, and also lessons that we have learned in the past, we all remember the shovel-ready dollars that came in from Washington to help our economies. A lot of that fell by the wayside and wasn't used to help repair infrastructure. We need to make sure that the dollars that are coming in from Hurricane Sandy, tied in with our own dollars in a city capital budget, tied in with dollars from the private sector, with dollars from the utilities, we need to make sure that it's used and used correctly, that we make our city better and stronger than before, so that we work on the roads and the bridges and other things to improve those. I've talked about and recommended a deputy mayor for infrastructure. We need that in the city of New York, but so we make sure we don't waste the opportunity and waste those dollars. But also, and last but not least, Bill is right, the mayor of the city of New York used to lead the urban agenda, used to go to Washington and work with mayors around the country. Infrastructure is a national problem. We need to have the mayor of the city of New York exhibit leadership again, work with mayors and others across the country to stand up and fight with Washington for infrastructure, because all across the country, no matter what the state, their infrastructure is crumbling. We need the federal government back in that business again. And last but not least, private-public partnerships are important. Let's be creative in looking at ways to be able to strengthen our city.
Bill de Blasio, two candidates mentioned your name, but you only get one 30-second bite at the apple.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, as a member of one of the city's largest pension fund boards, I take the fiduciary responsibility very, very seriously. But I have to contest Sal's point. Right now, we have a city that is short several 100,000 units of affordable housing. And we have pension fund investments in affordable housing that have given us a better return on investment than many of the traditional investments proposed by our friends on Wall Street, particularly in the last few years. We've seen what happened until the market's recent upturn. So we've got to look at alternatives that might allow us to do more with publicly controlled money. We can't use old-style solutions to a host of new problems we face. It makes no sense to turn away from an affordable housing crisis when, in fact, pension funds are part of the solution all over the country to the affordable housing crisis.
Good. Well, John, did you want to add
just
something?
very briefly, and we have looked at those opportunities, and in fact, we're making those investments. Just a couple of months ago, I was proud to stand with the teachers union president, Michael Mulgrew, and President Clinton to announce that as part of the Clinton Global Initiative, we're investing $1 billion of pension money in infrastructure, specifically to aid with the Sandy superstorm recovery efforts, to reconstruct housing and public infrastructure. It is going to yield a good return for our pensioners and therefore our taxpayers, and we'll continue to look for additional opportunities to leverage our public pension funds.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to our closing statements now in an effort to end this on time. It's been a spirited debate, and I think we've all gotten to know all the candidates a lot better. We'll start in the reverse order that we began. Bill Thompson.
Again, let me thank the Kens for being our moderators this evening, and for the Observer for being our sponsors, and for all of you this evening for coming out to listening to us. You know, as I said at the beginning, New York City is a great city. This is the greatest city in the world. At the same point, we still have so much and so many things that can be done to make this an even better city. We need to continue to make sure that this city stays the safest big city in America. We can't take steps back. We need to make sure we have an education system that works for all of our children. We need to continue to grow jobs in each and every borough all across the city of New York. And we need to create real focus on low, moderate, and middle income housing to be able to keep our people here. It's a question of who has the best experience and the strongest experience. Public sector, private sector. I believe that I'm the best person to lead the city of New York and to be the next mayor of the city of New York. And in this election, would ask for your support as I work to become a mayor for all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Christine Quinn.
Thank you. Well, I also want to thank the Kens, the 92nd Street Y, the Observer, and everyone who's been here tonight for being so interested in public and civic life and interested in who the next mayor of the city of New York is going to be. And I'd ask for your support in the mayor's race, because I want to be the next mayor to keep this city moving forward to an even place of greater opportunity for the middle class and all those hardworking New Yorkers who are striving so hard to get into it. And that means having a mayor who doesn't just make promises, but delivers. A mayor who'll move forward with the plan I've put out to create 40,000 new middle-income housing units over the next decade, to build on what we've already done, building housing through our work in the City Council, to move forward on creating good new jobs for New Yorkers across the city with a neighborhood-based economic development plan I've developed. And I want to be a mayor who takes my experience as speaker in delivering for New Yorkers to the mayor's office, but also in my experience as a tenant and housing organizer and a crime victims advocate, where I take all the experiences I've had with New Yorkers in those capacities and deliver to make their lives better as New Yorkers. So thank you all so much for your attention and time tonight.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present myself to you. I apologize for getting here late. There was another forum that I had committed to, and I did not want to break that commitment. I certainly am here in spite of our sponsor's editorial board, who has already, continued to foment insinuations and innuendos against me. They have tried and convicted me of charges that are non-existent. Nonetheless, I'm here out of respect for all of you who attended. There are important issues that face the city of New York: economic equity, issues of fixing our schools. I believe we got to stop treating our schools as business divisions reporting up to DOE Corporation. We've got to restore the learning environments in our public schools. And I have a plan to do just that, as well as to plan for the long-term growth of our city. I'm an immigrant who grew up almost my whole life here. Growing up in the public schools, from kindergarten on, I never imagined that I would ever have a chance to run for office, let alone serve in the City Council for 8 years, and now 3 years as comptroller. It would be a tremendous privilege for me to give back to the city of New York as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I love this city deeply, but I know we can do a lot better. And I look at the challenges we face, some of the things we've talked about tonight. I know we need to pass paid sick days legislation so 1 million New Yorkers who right now don't have that protection can have it. That's in the spirit of Fiorello LaGuardia we talked about earlier. I know we have to create some fairness and some respect again in the relationship between police and community in so many neighborhoods of this city, where that respect and that communication is fraying, because we're not going to be a safe city for the long term if we don't bring police and community back together. And I know we're not reaching enough of our children, especially in the earliest years of their lives. That's why I put forward a proposal, a straightforward proposal that said, I'm asking the wealthiest among us to help us over the next 5 years with a tax dedicated specifically to creating full-day universal pre-K so that every child in New York City, in every neighborhood, gets a full-day pre-K seat, and every middle school student knows they can have 3 more hours a day through after-school programs. These are the kinds of changes that would actually help our city move forward together, all neighborhoods, all boroughs. That's the kind of city I believe the vast majority of New Yorkers believe in. It's something we can achieve, and it's something that will give us a future we can be proud of. Thank you.
Sal Albanese.
I'd like to thank the Kens for a great job moderating.
The Kens.
The 92nd Street Y, the New York Observer for sponsoring the event, and all of you for coming out. This is democracy in action. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. There are a lot of proposals and ideas that are put forward here tonight, but none of them will come into reality if you get elected and indebted to special interests. You can conduct polls and figure out how to talk to people about the issues. However, what matters is who donates to your campaign, who supports you. I am planning, and I'm doing this, raising money from New Yorkers who are interested in good government around the city of New York. So I want to be a mayor that serves all of our interests. I don't want to, I'm the only person you can count on to ensure that the best interest of the city will be put forward over lobbyists and other special interest groups. With your vote and your support, I believe we can build a better New York. Thank you.
So I have 2 requests of you. If you are enrolled in a political party, Democrat or Republican, please make sure you take part in the primary elections to select the candidates of those parties when the primary happens in September. And for those of you, and I suspect that's most of you in the room who are registered to vote, regardless of your party affiliation, please make a promise to yourselves and to your children and to the future generations of New York to come out and vote in November and to bring some of your neighbors with us. So that's my first request. And my second is, let's give a very big round of applause to these dedicated public servants for their passion, their energy, and their willingness to put themselves on their line for you. Thank you all for coming tonight.